Spotlight is proudly sponsored by HEC Media, St. Louis's home for arts, education, and culture.
For me, it's the process of putting importance in these figures.
Is this a horrible time to be in the restaurant business? It depends on how you look at it.
Cautionary tale is probably the best way to classify it.
Today on Spotlight, an artist explores the idea of breathing with metallic, shimmery sculptures. Plus, the pandemic bursts a new concept, the ghost kitchen. And then why your antihistamines might not work for different forms of itching and allergies. But first, two former military officers and award-winning authors write a chilling book. It's Sunday and you're watching the Emmy Award-winning Spotlight.
In the year 2034, the President of the United States is a woman. Jonas Brothers songs are considered classics. And the world is about to go to war.
If there is a villain in this book, the villain is war itself. And if there's a message, the message is that war should be avoided at all costs.
And Elliot Ackerman knows war. He is a decorated U.S. Marine who did 5 tours of duty in Iraq and Afghanistan, winning a Bronze Star, Silver Star, and a Purple Heart. But Ackerman is also a journalist and a novelist, and his new book is 2034, a novel of the next World War, co-authored with Admiral James Stavridis. The trouble begins in the South China Sea.
We are very much entering into a type of new Cold War with China, but the frontier is not just nuclear, it also includes cyber.
2034 tells a harrowing tale that begins with the crew of a U.S. destroyer checking out what they think is a burning fishing trawler, but it's not. At the same time, a Marine aviator is flying an F-35, testing new stealth technology near Iran, when he suddenly loses the ability to control his plane. Sounds like a computer glitch, but it's not. By the end of the first chapter, 3 U.S. warships are at the bottom of the ocean, and the Marine pilot is a prisoner in Iran. 2 seemingly unconnected events that turn out to be very much related. They are the beginning of a war with China that escalates into a world war. Yes, it's fiction, but given the credentials of the authors, it can also be taken as a warning.
If America right now is continuing to tell itself a story about American global dominance, our lack of susceptibility to any threat, and that there is no nation on earth that can compete with us militarily or economically, and we continue to be the single great power in the world, that is probably a story that is going to get us in a lot of trouble.
How do you classify this book? Is it fiction or prediction?
I think it's cautionary tale is probably the best way to classify it. So, it's a work of speculative fiction. Imagine what a war would look like started by the United States and China in 2034, the aforementioned year of the title.
We could put it off to 2043 would be okay with me. It sounds pretty dreadful. You are a journalist as well as an author and many other things. Had you given any consideration to attacking this topic from a nonfiction point of view first, or did you decide that there had to be a great fiction book in this and you wanted to jump into that?
I think a lot has been written in the nonfiction realm in journalism and in policy papers around issues of a rising China, but I think far less had been written in terms of fiction, character-based narratives. And it was also the fundamental of this book was the idea of adding to, what had once been kind of a rich shelf of speculative fiction around the Third World War. Books like The Third World War by General John Hackett, or films like Dr. Strangelove. And that type of speculative storytelling, I would argue, is one of the things that actually kept us out of a war, because we had so richly imagined the consequences that we had come to a mutual conclusion with our Soviet adversaries that such a war would be completely devastating and not in anybody's best interests.
Not to make light of it, but it sounds like something would make a surefire hit movie. Has anybody talked about that?
We have a few people who are interested in it, so we'll see. Fingers crossed, but you never know.
Who would you have play Wedge?
I've joked with the Admiral about this because one or two people have asked us this question. I finally came to the consensus that, if this was a film, I decided that he and I would kind of tackle the project like Arsenio Hall and Eddie Murphy, and we would just play every role just wearing lots of makeup.
Elliot Ackerman, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Paul. And I like to say, for a grim book, we had a lot of fun writing it.
Scan the QR code on your screen with your phone's camera to watch the full interview and find out why he says too much technology could be a bad thing and why soldiers are learning the old school ways of doing things. Or just head to hecmedia.org. Scan the QR code on your screen to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram.
I originally started wanting to explore this idea of breathing while you're sleeping. So all the figures are in some state of stasis here, in which they're sort of either pleasantly dreaming or perhaps having a nightmare. But as the pandemic kind of started to happen early in 2020, the work really did shift. I think paired with the death of George Floyd, in which he started saying, "I can't breathe," the exhibition really, and the body of work really has taken a different point of view. And rather about dreaming, I think it's much more about the importance of air and air as a physicality. I think breathing is such a transformative experience in which we take the physical and we turn it into life. And so oftentimes we forget about the significance of that. It is unseen, and for me, this exhibition is so much more about making that real, combining it as part of who we are. I'm Kevin Koa. I was born and raised in Orange County, California. I currently am an assistant professor of art at McKendree University, so that has really brought me here into St. Louis. I have a background in biology, so I'm always fascinated with thinking about how the world looks and what animals and humans look like. So this exhibition is really part of that too. What if air suddenly became a very kind of mass and form, and what would that happen if it's really surrounded around us? I wanted to combine faces and these figures between air manifested as solid form, simultaneously reading as hair, as gilded figure, and also this idea of just the unconscious breathing that we experience every day. The work is made out of ceramic, it's clay, it's material. I predominantly identify as a clay artist, clay sculptor, figurative artist. And for me, I really like connecting the idea of this very ancient craft, ancient material, as this continuum of our human civilization and also human technology, that it's associated with so much of life. I build primarily out of coil. They are vessels, essentially, and much in the way that vessels are intended to breathe and hold things, I think of it as a metaphor for the human body, too. It's a container of organ, blood, flesh, all those things that are so magical in the physical qualities of our life. Most of my work lately has been reflective or metallic in some sort of sense. For me, the mirrored pieces reflect this idea of gaze, being able to see yourself as part of a person. For audiences to see themselves in the work quite literally. A lot of the figures are gilded, meaning they're covered in gold, and I think of them so much as making precious, making important, gilding. Very much so like ancient Buddhist statues, but also at the same time reliquaries. And for me, it's a process of putting importance in these figures. Simultaneously, they're all me, but also not at the same time.
On display through July 3rd. Visit KranzbergArtsFoundation.org for more information.
Go to hecmedia.org for the arts and authors,
Completely accidental because I never set out to write a book.
science and history, culture and community,
Considered to be the oldest organic farm west of the Mississippi.
education, films,
Finding the coin places the site firmly in the 13th century.
what's happening now around St. Louis, and more. See for yourself at hecmedia.org.
Breaking news. The first death from coronavirus here in the United States.
These new cases coming as a shock to every single state along the West Coast.
Cases soars above 3,000.
Avoid gathering in groups of more than 10 people. Avoid discretionary travel. And avoid eating and drinking at bars, restaurants, and
It's been over a year since the COVID-19 pandemic began, forcing local business owners to review their business structure. Through the turbulence of 2020, the service industry has been forced to re-examine their philosophy toward what it means to run a business within a community in health crisis.
These guys were sitting at home. They had 6 weeks to think about, what the heck am I going to do here? That's when it really sunk in. That's when they knew they had to make a change, that we are heading down a road that they've never been down before. So that's when you started hearing about all these different side steps, and pivot became the word of 2020.
I jokingly say that we opened a restaurant a year for 7 years, and I haven't worked harder than I have had to work the last year. The transitioning, the pivoting that we've had to do is unbelievable, and we've done it, and we did it well, and our team gets all the credit for that. We have amazing people.
The shutdown has been particularly hard on the restaurant industry. Owners who were once focused heavily on hospitality now look at their world through the lens of a commodities-based system, the economics associated with food, and the profits that coincide with running a restaurant.
I think it started with the pickup business. Okay, we're not coming in to dine, but hey, the restaurant's still here. Let's beef up our pickup and delivery business. And so they did. And a lot of guys were really good at it, and a lot of guys didn't do well at it. The fine dining places had a hard time adapting to that, because people didn't really want to go drop $80 on a meal to go. You go to a restaurant like that for the experience and for the service and for the ambiance. And if you're not getting all that, you don't want to really pay the price.
I think Illinois had just shut down, and we're like, all right, we're going to shut down and spend a couple days to figure out takeout. Okay, so we shut down Sunday afternoon. We spent Monday, Tuesday trying to figure out how we're going to make our first transition to go to takeout. And we reopened on Wednesday as takeout only. Jason created this amazing family taco kit that, you get a couple proteins and then this cool tray of all the toppings and tortillas and sides. And that's been really popular.
We product test all the time. We'll get a core, basically usually the protein, the filling, and then we'll kind of work off a bunch of ingredients around that. We'll change the tortilla from corn to flour, kind of weigh it all out and see what works best, and it's really fun. That's one of my favorite things.
So all these guys are preparing to be as multifaceted as they possibly can, and to look for any revenue source that they think makes sense, and they're pursuing that. And a lot of them are taking just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks approach.
Product development aside, the industry looked at new ways the dining experience could be achieved, beginning with assessing the functionality of each element of their brand, all the way down to bricks that hold the walls and ceiling together. This assessment produced a concept called a ghost restaurant or ghost kitchen.
Ghost restaurants are basically just a kitchen in an industrial area, because these things are designed for delivery business. That's all it is. It's extremely efficient, and you could have one concept under the roof, or you could have several.
There was a Facebook post asking people what their favorite meal ever was. And then someone said the salmon with plantain mole at Milagro was her favorite thing ever. I was like, wow, okay. And then a couple posts later, someone said the tuna ceviche from Milagro was my best meal ever. And then someone else said, hey, Jason, that's 2 things now from Milagro that is the best thing ever. And that got me to thinking. And I really miss doing this kind of food. It's fun. It's what I love doing. And then we have this big kitchen over in Webster Groves, ghost kitchen, Milagro. Let's put it all together and see what happens. And so far, it's been great.
For the Tilford brothers, the concept of a ghost kitchen meant a chance to revive a ghost of their own that had unfortunately closed its doors back in 2018. Milagro Modern Mexican in Webster Groves came on the scene in 2010 with a bang and continued to shape St. Louis's understanding of modern Mexican food until 2018.
That was great. We really made our name for ourselves there. Jason won Best Chef in St. Louis, which was such a huge honor. For Jason to get that award was really, for a Mexican restaurant, was really awesome and groundbreaking in St. Louis.
Adam and Jason are not the only ghost kitchen in town. In fact, according to an article written in February by George Mahey, this new wave of ghost kitchens has stirred up some celebrities to pursue ghost kitchens throughout the United States, bringing names like Guy Fieri's Flavortown Kitchen to the St. Louis metro region. Jimmy Donaldson, aka Mr. Beast, a popular online vlogger, has also shown interest as well in the metro area.
it'll be interesting to see if this goes further this year, or as restaurants open up, will they kind of fade away? Will it be a fad? But I know that there's a lot of available space in these industrial parks, which is where a lot of these places are located around the country.
George is a board member at the St. Louis Community College Culinary Program, and he had some parting words of advice for young restaurateurs that are just beginning their careers amidst the pandemic.
With misfortune comes opportunity. There are opportunities now that there have never been, and you need to be on the lookout for them because they're out there. I really think that these ghost restaurants and smaller concept, just let's keep this simple. We don't have to spend $1 million and try to, shoot for the moon. It just doesn't make sense anymore. If this little concept works, then we can repeat it over here and over here. So is this a horrible time to be in the restaurant business? It depends on how you look at it. And there's definitely a glass half full approach. And there are ways to take advantage of the opportunities that are out there.
A performance from the Big Muddy Blues Festival later on Spotlight.
During the spring and summer, allergy sufferers take antihistamines to keep allergies under control. Antihistamines are the standard treatment for allergies and itching. But often in the case of eczema patients with acute itch flares from allergens, the drugs don't help. Associate Professor of Medicine and Dermatologist Dr. Brian Kim is principal investigator of what became groundbreaking research.
You have antibodies circulating in your blood called IgE. The thing that always bothers us about eczema is that we knew that patients with eczema have IgE against a whole host of environmental allergens, but we never knew what it did.
Dr. Kim is co-director of the Center for the Study of Itch and Sensory Disorders at Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. Kim discovered why the itching doesn't respond to antihistamines. He says the itch signals are being carried to the brain along a previously unrecognized pathway that current drugs don't target.
It's this really rare cell, but potent cell in the blood called the basophil that we thought had no real clear function. Turns out to be very important in triggering acute itch flares in eczema. But what happens in eczema is that these rare basophils in the blood become the primary responders to allergen, and they release not just histamine, but another molecule called leukotriene, C4, which is very, very potent at activating itch. So this now starts to explain why maybe in some patients with eczema, taking antihistamines might be helpful for some of these acute itch flares. But for the majority of them, it's not helpful. And it's because it's actually a different circuit.
Kim says if they can block the pathway with drugs, it may become a strategy for a possible new drug target that would help more than eczema patients. It could also help treat other conditions.
Almost every allergic disorder has some lack of response to antihistamines as well, a very significant lack of response. So the question then is what's left? And the pathway that we've discovered may actually be very, very important, not just for itching, but a variety of other allergic processes, whether it's hay fever, coughing or wheezing and asthma, bowel discomfort and food allergy. So that's where we can actually potentially develop new drugs to target this pathway to alleviate many of those other processes.
For more information, you can find the full story on our website, hecmedia.org.
For content that keeps you coming back for more, go to hecmedia.org. Be entertained. Get inspired. Learn something new. Connect with your community. Go in depth with experts. And your favorite authors. For original programming and award-winning content, go to hecmedia.org.
I was always a maker of things. I was always interested in making things out of wood or metal or leather or whatever. When I discovered glass, I guess I was just fascinated by it immediately and fell in love with it. I started blowing glass in St. Louis at Washington University in about 1981, and I was interested in having my own studio. Found this old building here in Augusta and started building furnaces. I'm Sam Stang, and this is Kaiko Maihata, and we're standing in our gallery here in Augusta, Missouri. We're both glass makers. My work is known for clean forms and bright colors and bold patterns, often intricate patterns interspersed with bold patterns. Very fine detail often. The application of color and pattern probably come from things I've seen in nature. It can come from almost anywhere for me. I tend to use really vibrant, bright colors. A lot of other glass artists use more muted colors, more earthy colors, or more tones. And I tend towards primary and secondary colors because it's what I really love, you know. We're going to try to make the bottom of this thing be a sharp corner. So Kaya is going to paddle and Miles is going to blow very lightly. Go ahead, everybody. Press harder. Press harder. Stop. The early days of American studio glass were basically a lot of free form, dripping glass around and calling it sculpture. And I wasn't really interested in that, and I didn't really have a great deal of respect for a lot of that work. What I was interested in was more the work that was being done in Italy, in Sweden, Scandinavia, which was designed by designers and made by master craftsmen. My interest was to be a designer and master craftsman all rolled into one, which is what I've been trying to achieve. Glass is a unique material because it has no form. So what I start with is a pot of molten glass, which is like honey. Well, in many ways, it's different from a woodworker or a metalworker who starts with a form and then has to remove material. And I have to enlarge it by blowing into it and shape it. But the material itself doesn't want to be symmetrical necessarily. It's trying to be asymmetrical. This technique, this is called reticello, and it's basically a net pattern. And when I do shows, and whenever I have customers come in and see this, most people can't believe that this could possibly be made by hand, this technique. And I have to say this was developed in probably the 1600s in Italy, again in white and clear. And it's one of the most complex patterns to make. Having a glass shop, glass studio, is very different from any other sort of art or craft studio that I can think of because it's so expensive to produce. My gas bill alone is enormous, and my materials are enormous, but the majority of the work that you see in there, I'd say almost all of it, are things that I wanted to make, that I'm interested in, and that I'm not too worried about having to sell them because that seems to take care of itself. I have to be efficient and I have to make each day count. So I am forced to think about, at the end of the day, did I produce enough to make it all worthwhile? So I am forced to make things that fit in a price range. I actually find that to be a challenge, and that's a design challenge as well. What can I make that somebody who's not wealthy can afford, and it's still beautiful and it's still something they'd want to own? Fortunate in that so far people have bought what I like and what I want to make.
Scan the QR code on your screen to meet more St. Louis Art Fair artists.
HEC Media, bringing you culture and community. Find all of HEC's positive programming and award-winning content at hecmedia.org.
Listen up, fellas, got some advice to give. If you listen to me, boys, so don't get in it. I'm gonna teach you how to treat your woman right, so you can get some good loving on through with the night. Sitting down, sit up there. See us girls, we like those quiet types. We like those boys that are kind of act oh so polite. And if you and your baby are in a fight, you better wake up for you and see the light. You need to pamper her and shower her with lots of love, and tell her she's a gift from the gods above. You better let her know that she's the only one. You better take my advice if you want to get some. 'Cause I don't think you wanna wait too long. But if you don't listen closer to the words of the song, you won't get no loving if you treat her wrong. So when she says, come, you run on the fly. If she says, jump, you better ask how high. She'll give you lots of loving and more. She's gonna blow your mind right to from the sky. Because I don't think we're asking for that much. We just want a good man who will give us such a real strong with a sweet gentle touch. Alright, boys, I hope you heard me out, 'cause that's what it's all about. Better take my advice, because I'm not wrong. If you wanna get some loving, dance good and strong. If you wanna get some loving all night long, well, don't you wanna get some loving all night long? Thank you.
Next week, beautiful murals created by a father-daughter duo. Plus, a new book takes a deep look into the healthcare system. Thanks for watching Spotlight. Join us next Sunday at 9:30 a.m. on KPLR 11.